Imagine a love so dangerous, so forbidden, that it didn't just ruin lives, it nearly toppled one of the greatest empires the world has ever known. Rome, a city of marble temples, golden palaces, and endless power, seemed unshakable. From the outside, it was a symbol of strength and glory, but behind the walls of the imperial palace, a secret was unfolding. A secret not of war or politics, but a desire, betrayal, and passion so reckless it would threaten the stability of the entire empire. This is the story of a Roman emperor, his beautiful empress, and the man she dared to love in the shadows. The emperor was a man whose name alone commanded respect. To his people he was invincible, the chosen guardian of Rome's greatness, a man who had led armies and crushed rebellions. Yet beneath the armor of power, he was insecure, paranoid, and consumed by fear of betrayal. His empire stretched across continents, but the one thing he could not conquer was his own restless heart. His marriage, celebrated with feasts and parades, was not born of love, but of politics. The empress had been chosen for her noble bloodline, her grace, and her ability to calm the emperor's fiery temper. To the people, she was the embodiment of Roman elegance, a woman draped in silks and jewels who smiled with quiet dignity. But inside, she felt like a prisoner trapped in gold chains. She lived in a palace filled with every luxury, but what she lacked was the one thing she truly craved: passion. It was during one of the endless ceremonies in the palace, surrounded by senators, generals, and courtiers, that her eyes fell upon him. He was young, bold, and handsome, a decorated soldier who had risen quickly through the ranks. He was close enough to the emperor to be trusted, but far enough in status to be invisible in the crowd. Their first encounters were fleeting, no more than stolen glances across the marble hallways, subtle smiles when no one else was looking. Yet something stirred in both of them, a dangerous spark neither could ignore. In a palace where every word was measured, where every gesture was performed under the watchful eyes of servants and spies, even a lingering look carried the weight of risk. Soon, words followed glances, a chance meeting in the gardens after dusk, an exchange of pleasantries that carried undertones no one else could detect. She asked about his victories. He spoke of his loyalty to Rome, but beneath their words pulsed an attraction too powerful to remain hidden. They began to steal moments together, walking in the shadow of the palace walls, voices low, hands brushing for only a heartbeat before parting again. The empress, starved of affection, found herself drawn to his warmth. The soldier, once devoted to duty, became enslaved to desire. Each meeting grew longer, each embrace harder to resist. And soon, what began as whispers became nights hidden away. The empress disguised, the soldier risking his life for a taste of forbidden love. But Rome was not a city that forgave secrets. In this empire, adultery was not merely scandal. It was treason. The empress was not just a wife. She was a symbol of Rome's honor, and her betrayal could be seen as betrayal of the emperor himself. If exposed, the soldier could face death by torture, and she exile or execution. Every stolen kiss carried the shadow of the sword, every touch the possibility of disaster. Yet they could not stop. Their passion only grew, reckless, hungry, as if the very danger made it sweeter. The palace, however, had eyes everywhere. Servants who lingered too long in corridors noticed the empress disappearing for hours. Attendants saw the soldier arriving at odd times. Even whispers among the guards carried traces of suspicion. In Rome, rumors spread faster than wildfire, and the smallest spark could burn down an empire. Senators who despised the emperor seized upon the whispers, weaving them into plots, hoping to weaken him by exposing the scandal. The empress and her lover did not yet realize it, but the net was tightening around them. The emperor himself was not blind. He sensed a change in his wife. Her once tender gaze had grown distant, her laughter less genuine. At night, she turned away from him, and in public her smile seemed forced. To a man as paranoid as he was, it could only mean one thing: betrayal. And betrayal from within the palace was far more dangerous than any barbarian army. He began to watch her more closely, questioning her movements, testing her loyalty. He planted spies, ordered her chambers searched, even questioned her attendants. Yet nothing concrete emerged. Still, the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew into obsession. One night, the lovers nearly lost everything. They met in a dimly lit chamber hidden deep within the palace. The soldier clasped her hands as she whispered her fears, her voice trembling with both love and terror. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Guards approached. The Empress's heart pounded as the soldier pushed her behind a curtain, both of them holding their breath as shadows moved across the threshold. One careless mistake, one cough, one slip, and their lives would be over. The guards passed, but in their haste, the Empress dropped a golden bracelet, a gift from her husband. It lay glinting in the darkness, almost left behind as silent evidence of betrayal. Only at the last moment did she snatch it up, pressing it to her chest as the soldier whispered that they had been seconds away from death. This close call should have ended everything, but instead, it drove them deeper into desperation. If they could risk so much and survive, then surely fate itself was on their side, or so they convinced themselves. While love consumed the palace, the empire outside teetered on the edge of chaos. Rebellion stirred in the provinces, enemies pressed at Rome's borders, and senators plotted treachery behind closed doors. The emperor's obsession with his wife left him blind to the crumbling stability around him. Every ounce of energy he poured into suspicion was an ounce stolen from governing. Generals went unpaid, supplies grew scarce, and Rome's enemies sensed weakness. The greatest empire in the world was being shaken not by war, but by passion hidden in the shadows of its own palace. The whispers grew louder. Servants exchanged knowing glances. Courtiers traded rumors like coins. The emperor's advisors urged him to act, to uncover the truth before it destroyed him. And then, one evening, the inevitable happened. A senator, eager to rise in favor, slipped the emperor a parchment sealed in wax. Inside was a report from a spy, descriptions of the empress's secret meetings, times, places, even the soldier's name. The emperor read it in silence, his hand trembling not with sorrow, but with fury. His suspicions had finally been confirmed. His pride, his honor, and his empire had been betrayed. But he did not explode, not yet. Instead, he smiled coldly, a smile that chilled the air around him. He would not confront them immediately. He would wait, watching like a predator stalking prey, preparing the trap that would ensnare them both. The lovers had no idea their world was about to collapse. For them, the next meeting was just another night stolen from danger, another chance to hold each other and whisper dreams of escape. They had no inkling that every word, every touch, was already known, and that the emperor himself was planning the moment of their downfall. And with that, the stage was set. Their love had burned too brightly, too dangerously, and now it would ignite the fire. The emperor was patient, but his patience was born of rage. He had the evidence he needed, yet he wanted the downfall of his wife and her lover to be more than a simple discovery. He wanted it to be a spectacle, a warning, and above all, a punishment. In his mind, betrayal deserved not only exposure, but humiliation. So he set his trap with the precision of a general on the battlefield. He ordered his spies to withdraw slightly, to give illusion of safety, to make the empress believe that the danger had passed. He instructed the guards to look the other way at certain hours, to let the lovers grow bolder. Every detail was calculated. He wanted them to walk into a snare willingly, blinded by desire, unaware that their every step led closer to ruin. The empress, though shaken by suspicion, convinced herself that her husband's paranoia had subsided. She whispered to her lover that perhaps they had been too careful, that they could afford to breathe again. The soldier, emboldened by love and reckless devotion, assured her that nothing would harm them, that their love was stronger than the emperor's shadow. They dreamed of escape, of leaving Rome behind and finding freedom in some distant province where no one would know their names. But Rome's walls are high, and its grip tighter than chains. They did not realize they were already trapped within the emperor's carefully crafted stage. The night of reckoning came suddenly. In the dim light of a chamber hidden deep within the palace, the empress and her lover met as they always had. He held her close, speaking of their future, of a life beyond marble walls and gilded cages. She rested her head against his chest, her heart beating with hope, not fear. But then the sound came, the heavy crash of doors thrown open, the thunder of boots across the stone floor. The emperor himself entered, flanked by guards, his face twisted with fury and triumph. For a heartbeat, the room froze. The Empress's eyes widened, her hands trembling as she pulled away. The soldier reached for his sword, but the Emperor's men were already upon him. Blades pressed against his throat, arms twisted behind his back, and he was dragged to the ground. The Empress fell to her knees, pleading, her voice breaking with desperation. But the Emperor did not look at her as his wife. He looked at her as a traitor. The palace erupted with whispers as the scandal spread. Servants rushed to tell senators. Senators rushed to tell generals, and by dawn the entire city buzzed with the news. Rome did not keep secrets. What happened within those walls became the entertainment of the people, and the betrayal of the Empress was a story too delicious to be silenced. The Emperor, rather than hide his shame, chose to parade it before the Senate. He declared that Rome itself had been betrayed, and that justice would be carried out not in private, but in full view of the state. The trial was no trial at all, but a theater of humiliation. Senators gathered, eager to watch the downfall of their Empress, while citizens whispered in the streets. The soldier was dragged in chains, beaten but unbroken, his face bloodied yet defiant. The Empress was brought forth in her finest garments, though her beauty now carried the weight of disgrace. The charges were read aloud: adultery, treason, betrayal of the Emperor and of Rome. The crowd gasped, some in shock, others in delight, for nothing fascinated the Roman people more than scandal within the palace. The Emperor demanded confession. The soldier, though tortured, refused to break it first. He claimed loyalty, denied betrayal, until the pain became unbearable. Finally, in a voice strained with agony, he admitted what the Emperor wanted to hear, that he had loved her, that he had touched her, that he had taken what belonged to Rome's ruler. The words fell like knives into the silence. The Empress, however, remained silent. She neither confirmed nor denied, her eyes fixed on the floor, her dignity intact even as her world collapsed around her. Her silence was her last act of defiance, a refusal to give her husband the satisfaction of seeing her beg. The punishment was debated among the Senate. Some cried for blood, demanding execution. Others urged mercy, fearing the people's love for the Empress. The Emperor listened, his face unreadable, torn between wrath and weakness. To kill her outright might spark unrest. To forgive her would make him appear powerless. The soldier, however, had no such protection. He was sentenced to death without hesitation. His execution was staged publicly, a display meant to remind Rome that betrayal carried the highest price. He was paraded through the streets, mocked by the crowd, and finally struck down before the eyes of thousands. Some cheered, others watched in silence, and a few wept quietly for the young man who had dared to love too boldly. The Empress, forced to watch, collapsed in grief, her cries muffled by the roar of the crowd. Her fate was cruel in its own way. The Emperor could not bring himself to kill her, for despite everything, part of him still loved her. Instead, he sentenced her to exile. She was sent to a distant villa far from Rome, stripped of power, titles, and influence. She lived in isolation, her days filled with silence and regret, remembered not as the noble figure she once was, but as a woman whose scandal shook an empire. Her name became a whispered warning. Her story a tale mothers told their daughters about the dangers of passion unchecked. But the Emperor's victory was hollow. Though he had rid himself of his wife's lover and silenced her presence in Rome, the damage was done. His paranoia deepened, his cruelty sharpened. He trusted no one, not even those closest to him. Every senator became a potential traitor, every general a rival. He spent his nights plotting against shadows, while the real threats grew unchecked. Provinces rebelled, enemies invaded, and his allies began to turn against him. Rome, once mighty, began to crumble under the weight of neglect and misrule. The people, once entertained by scandal, grew restless with hunger and despair. The Emperor's downfall came as swiftly as his triumph. Betrayed by his own guard, he was struck down in the very palace where he had discovered his wife's secret. Those who killed him did not do it out of justice, but out of ambition, eager to seize the power he had weakened with his obsession. His death was not mourned but whispered about. Another emperor lost to Rome's endless cycle of power, betrayal, and blood. And so the story ended not with the clash of armies or the thunder of foreign invasion, but with the quiet destruction born from within. The secret lovers had not set out to topple an empire, Yet their passion lit the spark that exposed the emperor's weakness and unbalanced the fragile order of Rome. One forbidden kiss, one hidden meeting, one reckless affair had spiraled into a chain of events that shook the greatest empire in the world. In the end, Rome survived, but it was scarred, weakened, and haunted by the memory of what had happened behind its palace walls. The empress lived out her days in loneliness, the soldier's name erased from records, the emperor's reign remembered not for his victories, but for the scandal that consumed him. Love had built monuments, inspired poets, and fueled legends, but here it had nearly destroyed a civilization. Rom's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest dangers to empires are not the armies at their gates, but the desires hidden in their chambers. Love can be a force of creation, but in the wrong place.